Hello and welcome to 18 WJTS in.form. I'm your host, Bill Potter. We're now going to have part two with the Lieutenant Governor, Sue Ellspermann, who is joining us in the studio. Yesterday we talked about the good things that have happened in Indiana in this past year, but now let's look to the future. Lieutenant Governor, it's good to have you on the show again.
It's great to be here.
Well, let's talk about what is the future for Indiana. We've had a great year this past year, but what do we see coming up?
Well, we come into the long session, as we call it at the State House, the budget session. So we're a year and a half into the existing budget, which December's projections that we got for the budget forecast, every December we have a number of firms come together to look at what does the economy look like it'll be to project how much money will the state take in revenues for the next 2 years. That forecast showed 2.4% growth, which is very adequate. We're going to operate carefully with that because we know that not all of the growth projected 2 years ago occurred as we thought it would. So we're going to be conservative to that, but that still offers, the good news is that puts some new dollars in the budget. We're at about $15 billion a year today. So we're hoping that that allows, and the governor has been very explicit to say that his top priority is education funding. So we know that our local schools here, as rural schools, are certainly feeling the pinch as they've seen flat or sometimes shrinking funding because of lost enrollment. What we hope to be able to do with some of those new dollars will be to increase what they call foundation, that base rate that you pay per student, which would help all of, particularly our rural schools, where here, based on complexity, and complexity means how many low-income students do you have, we tend to be in that fairly, I'll call, lower levels because we are working, with 4% unemployment, people are working hard, but they're middle class. And so we probably see the lower end of that funding often. So we hope to be able to get that foundation up, which would give some relief to local school corporations for sure, as well as equalize across the state. And that's one hope.
Let me ask what may be a dumb question, but why is the enrollment down? Is it because there's just not many kids anymore?
Yeah, it's, you would say brain drain would be a part of that, and families are smaller than they used to be. I'm one of 6, but yet none of my siblings have gone to 6. We have 2. I have 2. My husband has 2. So I think it's a combination, and one of those great opportunities for this region, because we have 800 new jobs by last count, that we should really be attracting in. So hopefully both those things, we should always want our communities to grow and our schools to grow, and we have a great story to tell with the schools we have in this county and surrounding counties. So I'd be putting it on billboards if it were me, but I'd encourage that. But the governor also has several other initiatives. He really wants to focus on trying to make sure more children are in A and B schools. And A, B, C, D, F, that's the new grading for schools. Most of our schools in this area are A or B. And you can see it. Our kids learn, they do well, they go on to college and they do well. Not all of the schools across the state are in that same situation. And we'd like to be able to get 100,000, his goal by 2020 is 100,000 more students in A or B schools. Now that's of 1 million. We have about 1 million students across the state in schools. So that's an aggressive goal. That means we hope to bring schools up to the A to B status, and in some cases continuing to give parents choices of where they take their children. And then thirdly, a third area of focus will be CTE, which is our career and technical ed, funding that. We've talked about that. We know how important those mid-skill jobs are to manufacturing and other areas, particularly our area here. So expect that we're going to try to fund more there to encourage even greater success. And then the last item was the new pilot that was passed just a year ago. Governor has made a very strong case that he wants to support the pre-K pilot, which will commit about $10 million a year. We want to see, the important thing in Indiana, we've not jumped into pre-K yet. We do understand the great benefits of ensuring every child comes to school ready to learn, but we want to figure out how should it look in Indiana. So this pilot is really one to understand as we put these children, their families choose high quality pre-K environments, what works best and how do we do that if we go forward? Because when we choose to make that step as a state, it's a significant financial commitment to the state to be able to do that. So we want to do it well and right.
Make sure you check it out first.
That's right.
Now, this is a budget year.
Yes.
And it always seems that when budget years come up, education seems to be the one thing that's talked about the most. So
it's
what portion
over
of
half
the
our budget.
Okay.
Over half. I think it's about, don't hold me exactly to the percent, but about 40% on K-12. And then you can think another 10 to 15% for higher ed. So when you're over 50%, it does become the most important thing you talk, and it is. As I say, the Constitution for Indiana really states education is our responsibility. So that, along with public safety and roads, is key to what we do here. So education remains on the top of everyone's mind, and I think you hear that. I think there's a strong consensus that we want to put as much additional funding there as we can, but also make sure that we're directing it into areas that will derive the most success. And as we've continued to dig into that, to the career development, the career council work, you will probably see more performance-based outcomes where as we graduate more students, you get more, we've already done that with higher education, we put some of the funding on degree completion rather than just credit hours, because we want to ensure our young people are getting into a pathway and graduating with some kind of certification or degree.
Now, you mentioned the gas tax before that. We do drive less. Our cars are much more efficient than they were. So the state of Indiana takes in less gas money, tax money than there was ever before. So that money for roads, that affects the money for roads and bridges and transportation.
The legislature was very generous. The last 2 years, we committed an extra $400 million to roads outside the gas tax, which was very helpful, and adjusted some other funding streams as well to make sure they weren't pulling out of the actual gas tax money. But really, in the next 2 to 4 years, we're going to need to solve this problem. We can maybe put some additional dollars in again this year, but that will take away from what goes to education and other things. But we really do need to fix the formula. Again, to be fair, because I drive a hybrid, I get almost 40 miles per gallon. I should probably be paying more. We'll see more plug-in vehicles. They pay nothing. So we do have to find a way to just make it fair again. Now that gas is not the only fuel out there, we've got to just figure that out. It's a little more complicated than it sounds. VMT, vehicle miles traveled, is kind of the novel solution, but no one's quite gotten it right when you consider privacy concerns, because we really don't. We could easily put a chip in our car and know how many miles are driven here, but most of us don't want Big Brother to know that, of where we go. So we have to figure out how to do, if we do something like that, technology or something's going to have to catch up to being able to do that in an appropriate way. But something like that is probably going to be talked about, but it's probably not this budget, it's probably the next one.
Now, we've talked about the budget, we've talked about education. What are other things that'll be happening in Indiana that'll be highlighted this year? Because basically the budget and the legislation after March, no one talks about it too much anymore because everything's been established.
Yeah.
What are some big things that are going to be happening?
Well, one exciting area that I know that the governor is very supportive of is one of my agencies around tourism. We had a very austere budget for the last 2 years, only about $2 million devoted to tourism in Indiana, and it's very hard to promote with those smaller dollars. However, we did pretty much a pilot, if you will, with the honest to goodness branding that we did. We picked St. Louis and Indianapolis as the two markets, because you do have to market to your own people as well. But we found a 500% ROI, return on investment, for the dollars that we put in. We put about $1 million in, matched by some local dollars, and found that we got $5 back for every dollar that we invested. So we do expect to see some increase in tourism dollars, and then that will allow us to go after maybe the Chicago market, maybe into Ohio. And as we do, we want to demonstrate, and we have great, with venues like French Lick and Holiday World and the Dunes and Northern Indiana, we have plenty to attract, but we just don't tell that story very well. And usually locals can't afford to take out those kind of big market ads unless you're Holiday World. That's a very tough expenditure to make. So with tourism, our ability now to have the campaign, know what return it's made, that it brings those dollars back immediately in economic development, and to the communities, the return is much higher because so many of those dollars stay right in the community, not just tax dollars. So we're very excited that that'll be something to look forward to. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that that increase, but in most places will be pretty flat. We're continuing to drive lean in my agencies, just like manufacturing does and just like the hospitals are doing, trying to take out any kind of non-value added activity, and where we can save ahead or reduce time and improve quality, we're going to do that. So we're operating mostly on flat budgets.
Seems to me like Indiana always runs on a steady eddy. It's forward progress.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be huge amounts,
right?
But that's safe.
Well,
I don't mean that we don't take risks and that we're not moving forward, but it's kind of like the way people in Du Bois County live their life. It's a traditional growth.
It is. And the only thing I would ask that we do more of is tell our story. And that's certainly one of the things that I take seriously as I am across the country. I will be hosting this summer the National Lieutenant Governors Association Conference in Indianapolis, and can't wait to show off our state and the great things we're doing, and happy to share the best practices of Indiana to other states. But I think one of the reasons tourism funding is important is so we can tell the story. Our IEDC is starting to tell the story more from a business to business. We need to tell it from business to consumer and really help elevate the good things that are happening here. Because I think you're exactly right. We're steady, we're growing, we're going in the right direction, but we often just keep our nose down and keep working, as opposed to saying, hey, look what we're doing. And it's okay. It's okay. And I think that's one of the roles Governor and I see that we can and should do, which is to elevate Indiana as not, in the past they'd say we're a flyover state. We're not a flyover state. There are so many great things happening here.
Well, thank you very much for coming. Is there anything else that you'd like to add? Okay.
Just say Happy New Year.
Well, that's right.
Well, let's hope that 2015 goes as well as we're hopeful that it will.
Our guest has been Lieutenant Governor Sue Ellspermann. We certainly appreciate you taking the time to stop by the studios and talk with us, and we wish you a very happy New Year. This is 18 WJTS in Form. We're local people watching local people.